The first murder ever solved by DNA evidence. In the 1980s, in a quiet English village, two teenage girls were murdered in brutal fashion. Police thought they had their killer, until science revealed the truth. This is the story of how DNA evidence solved its very first murder case and changed the face of justice forever. It was November 1983 in Narborough, Leicestershire, a peaceful countryside community where crime was almost unheard of. That night, 15-year-old Linda Mann left a friend's house to walk home. She never made it. The next morning, her body was discovered on a secluded footpath, a place locals called the Black Pad. She had been raped and strangled. The village was shaken to its core. Parents clutched their children closer. Doors that were once left unlocked were bolted shut. The killer had left behind no witnesses, no fingerprints, just fear. For 3 years, the case went cold. But in July 1986, tragedy returned. Another 15-year-old, Dawn Ashworth, disappeared on her way home. Her body was found less than a mile from where Linda's had been. Same brutal attack, same lonely path, same village. A predator was still out there, stalking Narborough. Detectives were desperate. The community demanded answers. The police zeroed in on a teenager named Richard Buckland, a 17-year-old with learning difficulties. He knew details of Dawn's murder that hadn't been released to the public. After long hours of questioning, Buckland confessed. Case solved? Not exactly. Buckland admitted to killing Dawn, but he insisted he had nothing to do with Linda Mann's murder 3 years earlier. Detectives were puzzled. Could there really be two killers in one small village? Or was Buckland lying to cover the full truth? Many officers were uneasy. Buckland seemed confused, even fragile. Some doubted he had the capacity for such violence. But with his confession on record, the case seemed all but closed. Still, something about it didn't feel right. Just a few miles away, in a small laboratory at the University of Leicester, a young scientist named Dr. Alec Jeffreys was working on something that would soon make history. He had developed a revolutionary technique, DNA fingerprinting. Using blood or bodily fluids, he could create a genetic profile unique to each person, like a fingerprint written in our very cells. Until then, no one had ever thought of using DNA to solve a crime. The police, unsure of their case against Buckland, took a gamble. They asked Jeffreys to test the samples collected from both murders. What he found stunned everyone. The DNA from Linda's killer and Dawn's killer was identical. The same man had committed both crimes. But here was the twist. It wasn't Richard Buckland. The young man's DNA didn't match. His confession crumbled. For the first time in history, DNA had exonerated an innocent person. But the relief was short-lived. The revelation also meant something chilling. The real killer was still free. Armed with this new science, detectives launched an unprecedented plan. The world's first mass DNA screening. Over 5,000 local men, anyone between 17 and 34, were asked to provide blood or saliva samples. The village lined up to prove their innocence. One by one, samples were taken, tested, and compared to the killer's profile. It was a colossal effort. Newspapers called it a fishing expedition. Families waited anxiously. Police were hopeful. But weeks turned into months, and still no match. Had the killer slipped through the net? Was he hiding in plain sight? Then came a twist of fate. In a local pub, a man was overheard bragging that he had given his DNA sample on behalf of a friend who wanted to avoid the test. Police were alerted. That friend's name was Colin Pitchfork. Pitchfork was no drifter. He was a 27-year-old baker, married with 2 children. On the surface, an ordinary man. But detectives soon learned he had a history of exposing himself to women and girls. When officers finally got hold of Pitchfork's real DNA, the results left no doubt. It was a perfect match to the samples from both murder scenes. In 1987, Colin Pitchfork was arrested. Faced with the evidence, he confessed. He admitted to raping and killing both Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth. In January 1988, he was sentenced to life in prison, making him the first murderer in history caught using DNA evidence. For Linda and Dawn's families, it was justice at last, though no sentence could undo the pain. For Richard Buckland, it meant freedom, and the chance to rebuild a life nearly destroyed by a false confession. And for science, it was a turning point. The Pitchfork case was more than a conviction. It was a revolution. Forensic DNA became a new weapon in the fight against crime. It would go on to solve thousands of cases worldwide, from cold cases decades old to fresh investigations. It would free the innocent, convict the guilty, and give victims a voice when they could no longer speak. Narborough, once a village struck by terror, became the birthplace of modern forensic science. And the message was clear. Criminals could run, they could hide, but their DNA would always betray them. This was the moment when science stepped into the shadows of crime and forever changed the way we catch killers.